What I think is happening now with AI, there are going to be massive skills gaps that will continue to open, right, as AI evolves and this technology is introduced. And there's no way to hire for that. There's no pool of talent to go to. There's no outsourcing provider that's going to be able to give this to you. So now we have a situation for the first time, really, where companies are actually going to need to get people to learn. And so another critical element for L&D is thinking about not just offering the content or offering the access to the training, but how is it that we're going to work with the business and the HR function more broadly to get people to be motivated to want to learn.
Hello, and welcome, our dear listeners, to my podcast, Love People Technology Learning. And I'm your host, Tamara Kacharova, CEO LNCI. And I'm so thrilled to have you here with us today. And I believe that every conversation has the power to transform our lives. And today's guest is not exception. Today, we have the incredible Sandra Loughlin joining us. Sandra is not just the Chief Learning Scientist at EPAM, but she's also a true pioneer in the realm of learning and development. So get ready to be inspired, to reflect, and to learn from Sandra's wealth of knowledge and experience. And I can't wait to start to talk to you, Sandra. Welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Learning's my favorite topic, so I'm always up for talking about it.
Yeah, and all my podcasts, we start from first question about tell us your professional journey, because right now you're chief learning scientist, and tell us about your career journey. It will be really great to hear.
It's been a very unusual journey. Thinking back, there's no way that I could have imagined that I would be here today. But it all started when I was in college. I was going to be a lawyer, and then I was like, just kidding. I'm going to go and be a teacher. That was a very last minute decision. And I actually taught kids initially. And then I taught teachers. And then I realized how excited I was about just learning, right? Like really trying to understand the mind, motivation, the cognition, how do you get people to learn difficult things, not just kids, but anyone. And so I got my master's and then my PhD. And then I realized while I loved doing research, I decided I didn't want to be a researcher forever. I wanted to really think about how to get change to occur in the education space. And so, although I was a professor at the University of Maryland and I did teach and I did do research, a big part of what I also focused on was how do you bridge the gap between what students learn in school, in college in particular, and what they need to know, for the job. And so I also
Because it's a big gap.
a huge gap, and it's getting bigger too, which is like really scary. And so I did that for about 6 years and really was thinking about what is the future of higher education and business. How is it that we can close that gap? And that's actually how I initially met EPAM, the company that I work for now. So I initially came to EPAM to do as a consultant to EPAM, looking at how they were educating people within EPAM and then also how they were educating their pipeline of talent. And they wanted to know, was there anything special or exciting or anything that, they could do to improve. And so when I saw all the amazing things that EPAM does around learning, again, within the organization, but also in communities, in degree programs, like in every way, I was so inspired that I actually decided to leave my wonderful life in academia to join EPAM in this role. And now I have a very cool, very unusual job where I have kind of I do on the internal part of EPAM, I work on improving everything that we do around people. So especially related to learning, but also skill validation, engagement, culture, talent practices. So all the things that we do around people to make all of that better, and then also to take some of the things that we've learned that have been really effective and helpful for us and turn those into solutions for clients. So learning programs, culture change initiatives, enablement programs, executive education, all of those kind of things are what I focus on today. And it's been, again, like a kind of an incredible journey from being, teaching 10-year-old students to now helping executives both within EPAM and outside. It's been a very cool and unusual journey.
Sound like a great job. You told that's like, you mentioned that you have like incredible work, and you are chief learning scientist. It
Yes.
means not like a chief learning officer or like something like that. What's the difference for you? How do you feel it?
So the difference is that my PhD is actually in learning science. So my
Mm-hmm.
whole educational background is not in how do you deliver education, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how do you get people to learn? What we know is that so much learning happens outside of formal contexts, right? So, like
Mm-hmm.
through mentorship, through practice, through feedback, through reflection. Um, and when you do formal learning, it's not
Mm-hmm.
just about delivering content and managing access to content. It's really, again, about how do you get people to practice? How do you give them feedback? How do they know when they've learned? How do you bridge the gap between theory and work? So when my role, my title reflects my degree, and that also I think reflects the focus of what I do here. So it's not really traditional L&D in the normal sense. It's
Mm-hmm.
the science of learning applied to the workplace, and that's both formal and informal learning.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm really curious about you mentioned that it's a really big difference between like to be a scientist or like to be just like in learning and development field. Maybe do you have some maybe advices or maybe like some some special yes, advices or like features for learning and development field from the scientist, and like how we can copy it and paste to learning and development field, maybe something really unique which you see like a scientist in learning and development, maybe 2 3 points, but really, so maybe it will be really so valuable for the listeners.
Yeah, so I think a few of them. So I think the first one is that most learning does not happen in a formal context. And I'm like, what that means is that as as learning experts, as a learning scientist, when I'm thinking about learning, I'm actually thinking outside of like the training room or online content or even personalized learning paths. Like real learning happens in the context of practice and feedback. And a lot of that happens outside of a formal setting, right? So if I'm on the job, I'm on a project, I'm working on something, it's not working, I'm learning from the observation of not getting what I'm trying to accomplish. So at EPAM, we have a framework that we use around the informal learning. We call it Strive. It's focusing and actually in our L&D organization, building out support structures for things like social learning, for teaching others, teaching people how to reflect on their own learning experiences, how to I as investigation, how to research, and that's especially true right now with Gen AI, like learning how to actually ask the right questions of a large language model to really kind of learn and grow, right? V is vocational. So for us, that means communities of practice, joining professional organizations, going to conferences. And then E is experiential. So being able to look for job rotations or being on stretch assignments and learning just in the flow of work, ideally with a mentor or someone that would give you feedback. So I guess part one of like the learning science piece of me is informal learning is very important, and frankly it's leveraged or at least under supported, I guess, in traditional L&D organizations. The second is that for me, learning is not about whether you've sat through a course. It is not about enduring content. Learning is about
Mm-hmm.
the motivation. People have to actually want to learn. And so another critical element for L&D is thinking about not just offering the content or offering the access to the training, but how is it that we're going to work with the business and the HR function more broadly to get people to be motivated to want to learn?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you build that interest? How do you help people prioritize? How do you give them the right kinds of learning experiences that they can connect to and get excited about? And then I guess last but not least is like measuring learning. How do you know when someone's actually learned something? And that's not just to talk about the ROI, although that is very helpful. It's really just because, historically, I think L&D organizations have gotten away with being able to give access to content, and like the metrics have been who has opened the courses, how many courses do we have, how many hours of content people consumed. But really what the business needs now is evidence that people have actually developed skills. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to understand how you would get indicators of real learning, working with technology and the business
Mm-hmm.
and SMEs to build the right environments where you can assess learning and then document that and use that to show value, but also to train your learning approaches in general, right? So I think those are three big things that, coming from my background in the learning sciences, is something that I think is very, very critical that I don't often see applied in many L&D organizations.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing. I think, yeah, I totally agree. And yes, you mentioned it's like the last one about the measurable of learning. It's really so crucial. And yes, thank you for sharing. I love it. And like, you started to talk about like skill development, and you've mentioned the complexities of skills transformation in your recent post in LinkedIn, because I analyze a lot my guests LinkedIn posts, videos, um, uh, uh, podcasts, video, YouTubes, like, yes, everything. And can you share a pivotal experience that shaped your understanding of what makes a skill-based organization truly thrive? Because like, it's really crucial right now, like
Yeah.
we know it.
Well, there are so many elements, like so many elements to skills transformation. It's going to be hard for me to list them all out. I think the thing that I have found to be the critical value to the business, right, is actually going back to learning. So if you think about any organization, right, when you have a new strategy, there's new technology, something new is occurring, right? What you naturally have created are skills gaps. Like you have something new, you need to have a workforce that has the capabilities to do that new thing, whatever it is. Um, until very recently, and I mean, even until I guess now, um, companies have been largely able to close those skill gaps through hiring or through outsourcing to providers like EPAM or others, right? So even though there were skills gaps and and executives were concerned about those and talked about those, it wasn't necessarily a problem of learning because you, again, could fill those gaps in other ways. What I think is happening now with AI is that there are going to be massive skills gaps that will continue to open, right, as AI evolves and as technology is introduced. And there's no way to hire for that. There's no pool of talent to go to. There's no outsourcing provider that's going to be able to give this to you. So now we have a situation for the first time, really, where companies are actually going to need to get people to learn. And now I'm going to go back to what I said a few minutes ago about the fact that people need to be motivated to learn. And right now there is, like, in any L&D organization, there's, everyone get frustrated because you're giving access to all of this content, and who's doing it? not enough people. So to me, this is where I see the most critical use case and value of being a skills-based organization. Because if you're doing skills-based orgs correctly, what that really means is including skills in performance management. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
people keeping their jobs and growing in their careers in large part because they have demonstrated the skills that they need. So if you have a situation where you have an employee who has some skill gaps, they know that they have those skill gaps. They know
Mm-hmm.
that what good looks like. What does it mean to like what how will they know when they've closed those skill gaps? What are the performances that they have to be doing differently? And they know that in a year from now they're going to be assessed on their ability to demonstrate that skill to keep their job or to get a promotion. Now you have created this like perfect opportunity for learning where you have people who are motivated, they're oriented, they know what good looks like, and they have the
Mm-hmm.
resources that they need to learn. This is where I think this is why I'm a huge fan of the skills based. I mean, one of the reasons, but as a learning professional, as a learning person, this is the only model that I've ever seen in any organization
Mm-hmm.
that will create this like true continuous learning culture. And if you can do that, if you can consistently get people to learn new skills and apply them and do their jobs differently, you have unlocked business agility from a people perspective. And that is an extraordinary value for any organization.
Yeah. And you mentioned a lot about AI and technology, what happened right now, not just like for the employees, it's like all over the world, like everywhere, AI. And as someone deeply integrated into AI driven business transformation, how do you balance the advancement in technology with the human aspects of learning and development? And have there been any surprising lessons from this balance which you saw?
So I think we're still very early on in this process, right? I think um, what I find really fascinating is that the real value that I think we're going to be seeing with AI hasn't really hit. I think most people don't really understand it yet, and it's this AI agents, right? Right now, when we talk about AI, it's often in the context of like I'm going to go prompt, a large language model to help me write a paper or
Yeah, right.
respond to an essay or I don't know, do something, right?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of value in that and just like some there's super incredibly cool things that it can do. But working at a company who like AI is what we do, right, for our clients and for ourselves, the real incredible impact is going to come from AI agents who are doing entire workflows on their own and actually like working in little agent groups where there's like several of them working together to solve like really big workflows. This is something that we are still trying we're in the process of defining, and we will be. I think as AI continues to evolve, we're going to see more and more and more of those tasks being taken over. The question then remains, what's left for people? And there's going to be a ton of stuff left for people. We just don't know exactly what all of that is right now. But what we do know is that it's going to require people to learn new skills that they don't have today, right? And it's going to require them to learn on an ongoing basis. And so I think one of the most exciting and I suppose surprising things about all of this that I'm seeing right now is the fact that I think this movement toward AI is going to be the thing that actually, for the first time, I think actually teaches people how to learn. I think to date, so much of what we consider learning is actually just some expert tells you something and you can respond back and you can restate it or reframe it.
Hmm.
But in practice, that's like real learning is not about being able to regurgitate something that you've been told. It's about recognizing opportunities to use this thing that you know in the wild, right? In a context where no one's prompting you, like you have to be able to
Right.
see it and recognize that. And there's a way of learning that most people have never had to do, where you actually teach yourself to do that. And actually
Mhm.
Gen AI is a fantastic tool to help you develop what we call this conditional knowledge. Like, under what conditions am I going to apply this thing? And so what I find most interesting about this whole process, or this, I guess, whole paradigm shift, is that in many ways, I think it's going to help us as a society, as a world, become more metacognitive, more understanding of how we learn, more proactive in learning. And I think that is going to unlock a lot of the new skills and jobs and sectors that AI will create that we can't even imagine today.
Yeah, and my next question is really like, I'm really curious about, like you mentioned, that's like AI. It's like, yes, it's like a buzzword, and we started just like do something with AI, and we learn a lot every day. But like in learning and development, maybe in your department in EPAM, do you use some professional like software or tool for learning and development needs with AI right now? And like you love it. Maybe like you mentioned some, I don't know, maybe some features which you really love to use in your work, not just like ChatGPT or Claude or like Copilot in Microsoft. Like, it's not a professional software for learning and development needs. It's like something more, but like some specific tools which you really love and like you want to develop in this field, some tools.
So we're building a ton of tools. So EPAM is very much a, like, we're
Yeah,
going
I
to build the
know.
cool
I
stuff here.
know.
Like, right? And actually, I was on a call earlier today. So
Yeah.
our team has been building, it was a lot of things, but one, again, that just came to mind. So we are building these things called AI games. And these are actually learning games where you are given some sort of very complex scenario, and you are the AI is trained as your neighbor, or as as someone that works for you, or as a client,
Yeah.
or as whatever. And it actually is through dynamic interaction, like, you're trying to get it to do something, to buy something,
Hmm.
to take this point of view, to like whatever. And the experience itself is like you're learning how to interact and get and convince people to do this thing. um, and it's super fun, and it's really effective, right? It's like the opportunity to practice and get feedback from a very complex other, right? Another person. And you can, take, years of practice that you would have to take in the real world. You can condense that and actually learn incredibly quickly. Like, this is the kind of thing, from a learning perspective, that it was just not possible prior to the application of Gen AI. Like, another one is having a learning coach that is actually trained on your work. So we have, a solution architecture is a role at EPAM. There's a massive amount of work that needs to get done to understand some parameters for an architectural, like, approach. We are now training Gen AI to actually, like, on all the workflows. And so, like, you have architects who are uploading tons and tons and tons of documentation.
Hmm.
The AI is actually identifying some of the core patterns, and is sitting next to the architect as they're building out the approach, and saying, have you thought about this? Ooh, did you remember this thing? Oh, by the way, don't forget, here are some best practices. Like,
Wow.
these are the kinds of learning tools. Again, one is very much not in the flow of work. It's just kind of like for fun, and you're practicing, and you're getting,
Yeah,
getting
practicing.
ahead of
Yeah, like
time.
a muscles, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then one is happening actually in the flow of getting work done.
Yeah.
And those are only two examples of many that we are seeing, where we are going to, in the next year or so, have AI as a learning tool in a way that has never even been thought of before. So when I think about the
Hmm.
value of AI and L&D and in learning, I'm not thinking about it from a content creation perspective. Yes, that's there. There's a value in that. But it's more like, it's kind of like you're training this incredible like tutor that's sitting right next to
Right.
you, giving you feedback. And in addition to helping you learn, it's also able to essentially like validate that Sandra has this skill now or this set of skills. And that in and of itself goes back to like the whole skills intelligence conversation, which really helps with staffing and hiring and deployment and all the other stuff.
100%. And like, I really totally agree with everything what you mentioned. And about like you told about games like to practices. And in Lane's AI we created AI role playing. It's special for training to practice to develop your skills, because you know how it works. If you want to develop your skill set, like, it means it's not enough just training or read the book. We need to train. It's why we love personal or virtual trainings, because we need people to train, and we need to get a feedback, like uh, how we need to know, is it good, or like what we need to develop, or like something like that, what's the gap. Yes, and it's really true. It's why right now AI, it's not just like for creating just content asynchronized and help us like asynchronized. Right now we are in an era where AI, it's our partner, and like it's something which we can talk and do something every day together. It's really true. And thank you for sharing. Like, yes, it's really great examples how to use it, and it's reality, not just like something which we are thinking about. Yeah. And you worked at EPAM for a long time. What specific initiatives have you championed there that you believe could serve as a, like, blueprint like for other organizations striving to cultivate a learning culture? Because you talked a lot about learning culture, not just like something which we need to read about, or like it's a formal, like it's something informal. Like, maybe you share something really unique.
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, I'm all about the skills. I'm a big skills nerd. I do think this whole skills-based organization and the movement toward that is foundational for drive to create that real continuous learning culture. The other thing, of course, I think, and I'll say this again, is like this informal learning. I know I say this a lot, but informal learning is something that is so powerful. And it's relatively inexpensive, and typically most companies don't even think about it. And it's so unfortunate because this is again so much value comes from that. So I would love to see more organizations really focused on that. I know that's a big emphasis that we have that I'm happy to have contributed to a lot here. Um, I guess another thing that has been a passion project of mine at EPAM is the focus on non-technical skills. So, right, we're a technology organization. We're super excited about all the technical skills. We recognize and always have that, the softer skills, like the durable human, whatever term you want to use, are important. But we did not have as strong of an emphasis on those historically. And
Hmm.
this is, we're changing that. We've been doing a lot of work around like how do you know if somebody has empathy, or if they're a good communicator,
Right.
or if they have good client presence. Like, these are all very important things. And so, thinking about that as a skill, as opposed to many companies who think about skills, it's really they're just thinking about technical skills, and that's a huge
Hmm.
oversight. So understanding, the fact that durable skills, or again are skills, they can be quantified, and because
Hmm.
they can be quantified, and they can be trained, right? These are things where you can
Right.
tell people like what good looks like, how to build toward it, build those coaches and help people get feedback and grow. Those are things that I have really been passionate about at EPAM, and have
Hmm.
added to our repertoire. But I will say, like, I have to just give a lot of credit to EPAM. So much of the amazing learning things that exist here predated me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
why I came, because I was just so impressed with what they had done.
Right. Yes, and you work like I think it's really crucial. You mentioned about this about like measurable result. Like you work with skills data like is fascinating. And how do you measure the success of learning initiatives in a way that aligns like with both employee engagement and business outcomes? Because the result of learning, it's really so crucial to connect, and it's so hard. I know, like I was chief learning officer, and I know it's a really so like so hard to connect employees engagement and their results with the business outcomes.
Yes, and I always want to be very so. Well, here's my little soapbox, right? Any business
Yeah.
outcome, whatever, I don't care what it is. You have to think about all the many different variables that will go into your, how many customers,
Mm-hmm.
how much revenue. Like there are so many different things
Right.
besides what people know, right? And even if you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the individuals, forget customers, forget macroeconomics, an individual can know something and still not apply it because their incentive structures are misaligned, the processes are bad, they don't have the right tools. So really, like when I talk to both internal EPAM and to our
Mm-hmm.
clients about how do what does it mean to measure the impact of learning, I'm always I caution people against tying learning to any real complicated outcome because there's too many other variables to control for.
Mm-hmm.
In my world, my emphasis and the way that I think about measuring learning and its connection to the business is directional. Right. So what I believe and what we practice here is we will, before any sort of learning intervention, we will take baseline data. And it could be on mindset, it could be on knowledge, it could be on behaviors, it could be on whatever it is. We will collect baseline data, um, and then we will do the learning intervention, and we will collect data again at the end, right? We're going to see if there's a delta in the thing that we have directly been trying to change. So again, mindset or knowledge or skills or whatever it is. And then we can say to the business, okay, we now can say that we've seen a 30% growth in this critical behavior on the job. This suggests that now people have the what they need in order to actually perform differently. But it's now on you, business, to make sure that people are incentivized to actually perform that way, right? Or that they have, the processes are sufficient, that it's not incredibly challenging for people to work in that way, or like so many different other variables. So like again, like I'm a scientist, right? When I think about all of these outcomes, I'm thinking about it from the like what are all the different variables? We can lock down one, two, maybe even three of those. But if there are 10 or 15 others, it is, I think it's never a good idea to try to solve for a complex thing with a very simple component of a broader solution.
Yes, it's really true. And like, yes, thank you for sharing with us. And my next question will be about like something really globe, because like you work like as someone who presents globally. Like what has been the most profound lesson you've learned from your interactions with diverse culture and perspectives, because you are working in a global company and like all over the world. And I think it's really unique when you work with the people from all over the world with different culture codes. It's not just about skills, it's about culture code, about the mindset, about like, and I want to learn more about you and about your perspective on this in this field.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? As an American, like of course I have this like American worldview, and when I came to EPAM, and I was like, oh my goodness, like all the world does not think the way that I think. They don't understand things the way that I understand them. So like it's been an amazing experience personally, just being in a place that is so diverse. Like we're in 100 and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, 50 something countries. I don't know, we're all over the
Yeah.
world. And the EPAMers are incredibly diverse as well. So there's a few
Right.
things that I would say. So one is that there are from how people want to learn and how people are comfortable interacting and engaging, and like even the amount of energy and time and when they will do all their learning is a very culturally dependent, right? Like, I saw some of this when I was teaching at university, but to see it here, it's been really very interesting. People just have a very different orientation toward how they want to learn. And they are also in many ways very differently oriented toward what sort of credential do they expect at the end. So this has been a very interesting thing for us. Like, in the US, we talk a lot about, we want to give people degrees. You want to give people like these non-traditional credentials and degrees. Whereas if you go anywhere else in the world, they're like, no, 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 I want an actual degree. Give me a master's degree. I don't care about these like stackable micro credentials. Another, and these are just like a few things that come to mind. Another one is like how much people want to work together when learning. Like in the US, it's very much a collaborative culture, like where you're talking together, you're working together, like you're processing together. And in other parts of the world, they're like, no, I'm good. Leave me alone. Let me do this on my
Right.
own. Like I will solve for this and I will come back and I will work with you when we have to work together. Um, so there's that. There's also a very different focus on like online versus in person. Like there's some
Absolutely.
cultures where like you actually want that expert in the room, even if you're not interacting with them. You want that person there because it makes you feel special. It makes you feel like you're being educated. Whereas in other parts of the world, like they don't really care about that. Like they want to get the stuff done in their, in between making dinner and getting kids to
Mm.
bed, right? There's just so many different facets from a how people want to learn, what learning feels good to them. And I think being in an organization that has such a diversity of people and things that people need to learn, and even like groups of learners, so employees versus college students versus older adults versus little kids, these are all different kinds of groups. And I think being able to design learning programs by first thinking about who are you actually trying to get to learn, understanding their preferences, their norms, their expectations, and then designing the programs to make sense to them is something that I have definitely gotten a lot better at in the past 6 years since coming to EPAM.
Oh my God, yes, I love it. And you mentioned a lot about like the culture code. It means when you created or provide some learning activities or like something which you want to develop in a different countries, you should think about this point, and you should create a lot of learning products. Like
Yeah,
we are thinking that it's just one for
no,
like everybody. No, like you should think, and I love it. I think it's like, for me, I think it's the biggest challenge which we have when we
hmm,
work all over the world. Like we need to learn a lot about people,
yeah,
because I think in learning and development, people in the center. Like it's a, yes, people oriented function. And yes, yeah,
yeah.
thank you for sharing it. I love it. And I think like my last professional question for you will be like, it's a, it's like between professional and personal. Like we talked a lot today about complexities of skills transformation, and like this one, what personal challenges have you faced in your own journey, and how have they shaped your resilience?
So, God, so many challenges. I guess one of the I mean, it's been a challenge, but it's actually been super fun. So when I came to EPAM, right, EPAM is a super advanced like engineering
Yeah.
culture, like software engineers, data scientists, like AI experts. When I came to EPAM, I thought cloud was like the stuff in the sky. Like I had zero understanding of the technology space, right? And it it's been so difficult for
Mhm.
me to learn that, and not just to learn it, for me to be in this place where I I feel like an idiot like half the time because I'm just like, what are you? I have to go like look
Right.
up what they're saying. Like and it's gotten obviously like a lot better over the past few years. But I think from an emotional point of view, right? This was a huge challenge for me, and it was.
Hmm.
I really began to appreciate um, what it's like to be in a place where you have to learn so it's like you have to learn your whole job all over again in a whole new
Hmm.
context in an environment where people know way more than you do and you need to like keep up with them and
Hmm.
be open and like acknowledging that you don't know all the things that they know but not losing
Right.
confidence in what you do know. I think that that has been a tremendous personal learning opportunity for me, and it also has reinforced what I said earlier about how much learning happens informally. So I have never since coming to EPAM taken a class on what are the foundational technologies that we care about as a business. I have learned those through asking questions and researching and teaching myself, like going and researching like on Google or whatever. And I now know the clouds are not the things in the sky, but like I've learned so much more. And it's funny, like I will sometimes make jokes about like cloud or API, and
Uh-huh.
I'm so proud of myself when I can do that because it shows me that I've actually learned something. Because like other people laugh, and it makes sense. And so
Right. Yeah.
I feel as though like this the place that I've been in for 6 years has been a place of excitement, but also discomfort. And I think that this is where pretty much everyone is going to be now as Gen
Hmm.
AI is changing roles, requiring us to learn new things, to work in different ways. And it's been a good practice, and I
Right.
think that other people are going to start to experience that more and more in the next couple of years.
Right. And you are absolutely right about when you start to understand the jokes and can tell some jokes about the theme. It means you are like a fluent,
Yes.
like a native language speaker. It doesn't matter, is it like English language, or like Spanish language, or IT language,
Yes,
like
IT.
something like, yeah, it like it doesn't matter. I talked to my great friend. He's Irish, yes, and I'm native Armenian and Russian speaker. And we I was in Portugal, and my friends, they live there, and my friend's husband, he's Irish. And this summer, when we was in a cemetery, and he he said some really specific joke, and it's a joke about like Russian cartoon, and about hedgehog. And just like native speaker can understand what he means, but he's Irish and he can tell it in Russian. And like, and I told, oh my god, no, I can't believe you are like a native speaker. And he told, yes, of course, because my wife like,
Yeah.
and like, and it means the same when we start to understand the jokes and everything. Like,
Yes.
it means yes. And it's a big challenge, but you did it. And like, yes, it's great. I love it. I love this story. And yes, I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and outside of work, who or what inspires you the most, and how does that inspiration influence your life? Maybe not just professional, but your real life. Like, can you?
My real life. Oh my goodness. I have um so my husband is like I've always just like admired him from the first day that I met him in college, right? Long, long thousand years ago. Um, he, he inspires me, and he always has. When I first met him, I was not doing well in school. I was like, I don't care. I'm not going to be success. I know. I was like, don't like my kids don't know this, but like And like I was just kind of like sloughing off and not really paying
Right.
attention and whatever. And when I met him, like he was this guy that was always like getting everything done on time, super
Mhm.
smart, super organized. And like I know this sounds really weird, but like he inspired me to actually like take my schooling and my life very
Mhm.
seriously, right? He's been an amazing dad. He's like his career is super fantastic and very, very interesting. And so I know that maybe it sounds like really cheesy, but I think a
Yeah.
person that inspires me every day is my husband, and like I
It's a
am
great when you
thrilled that
have
I
a
get.
it's a great that you have a mentor near you, around you every day. It's a dream, I think so. Yes, I love it. And what hobbies or activities recharge you and bring joy to your life outside of your professional responsibilities, like maybe by yourself, with your husband, with the family, like, yeah.
So I love to garden. Like I used to not be able to grow
Wow.
anything. Like I'd kill all the
Okay.
stuff. Um, but now like I've kind of I've learned how to be patient, how to do research. I love to
Mhm.
design gardens. I love to design like how they will look in the spring, in the summer, in the winter.
Wow.
Um, so I do that. I enjoy that. I also love to design like houses and like
Mhm.
rooms and like this kind of thing. Like I really enjoy.
Absolutely, I told you that's when I watched a YouTube video with you in your background. I thought, oh my god, is it like a
It's
Zoom
real.
background? Is it real or it's a Zoom background? But like, yes, I
Yes.
was really surprised that it's real because it looks like so perfect. You know what
Oh,
I
well, thank
mean?
you.
Like details. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Like it's definitely I love doing that. And then I think the other thing that I love doing is like yoga. Like I
oh,
love the at the end of it you feel so open, you feel so centered and calm and like
right.
um I love the balance of like really pushing your body very hard and then also quieting your mind. I think I guess those are the three things that I really enjoy. Plus
Right.
reading, of course. I love reading.
Yes, plus reading. What book or resource has had the most significant impact on your life, and how has it influenced your approach, like to both work and personal growth? Like, yeah, share, because yes, I know that you love reading.
I do. I love it. So I think so. What's interesting about from a professional standpoint, it
Mm-hmm.
isn't. I mean, it wasn't a book, but the book wasn't really the point. There's this one quote um,
Mm-hmm.
from a professor at Harvard of mine named David Perkins. And
Mm-hmm.
it is, I think, there's been decades and decades of research on how people learn, on neurobiology, like biopsychology, like everything, right? Um, and it's like he distilled these massive fields into the most profound and simple thing that has been like the thing that drives my professional world. And it's this saying, it's called Theory One. And I believe the direct quote is people will learn much of what they have the reasonable opportunity and motivation to learn. And so, again, thinking about learning, it also works for behavior change, but like thinking about people from the perspective of not just giving them the opportunity, not just giving them the coursework or the places to go or the mentors, but actually thinking about what's going to motivate them to work hard, to change things, to behave differently. Like thinking about those two things as equally important has been a foundation of how I have understood my job in every role that I've had for the past whatever 15 years. It shapes how I think about building learning programs. It shapes how I think about the skills-based organization and driving behavior change in organizations. And it kind of all boils down to that one quote that I just think is incredibly profound.
Wow. Yes, thank you for sharing. But like maybe not professional book,
Okay.
some kind of book which you really love and enjoy, like, outside of the work.
So I guess one that has come to mind, and it's not the only thing, but
Yeah,
a
yeah,
book
absolutely.
that
Mm-hmm.
totally like blew my mind was called The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael
Mm-hmm.
Pollan. And I read this years ago. Um, and it was just about like where our food comes from. And it's so funny, like I had never ever thought about that before. And when I was reading it, it was at a time when my son was incredibly sick and no one knew what was wrong with him.
Oh, wow.
And so it shaped my own thinking about like food and what I put in my body and my kid's body. But it actually helped me understand in many ways, um, and helped like me to diagnose my son and some of his challenges. And so it isn't like a book that's like shaped my professional like or my worldview, but I think when I think about books that have had like that blew my mind and completely kind of changed how I thought about a certain thing, that book is the first thing that comes to mind.
Wow. How old is your son?
This one, he's 15 now.
Oh, 15.
So this was a
This
while
one, you
ago.
have another one.
I have
Girl?
two, yes. I have two boys, 15 and
Oh,
11.
oh my God. I love it. I have three boys,
Oh,
9, 7, and 3.
oh my goodness. That's so
Yes, boys queen. I called it boys queen.
yes. I love it. Yes. And like they're easier in some ways, at least
Yes,
longer term. We'll
absolutely.
see.
Absolutely. We'll see. Okay. And my three last questions which I ask the like everybody. All my guests answer for these three questions. First, what was the last thing you asked ChatGPT or Claude or I don't know, different kind of chats?
I think I was asking about how it's very technical. I was
Yeah.
asking about what is, if I were trying to help HR leaders explain the value of the skills based organization
Mhm.
relative to their AI strategy, what are the most three most critical talking points that they would make when talking to their CFO? I think I
Oh,
asked that like
wow.
this morning or something.
Ah, great. Tell your favorite quatrain or lyrics and explain why exactly you choose it and love it.
Ah. I guess um my favorite lyrics that are coming right now, it's from a song by Journey called Faithfully. It's my favorite like song, like a pop song. And what I love about it is that it is the story of a guy in this case who is um like just like thinking about his significant other and he's traveling and she's not there, and how he's just committing to being with her even though all of these complexities and temptations are surrounding him. I've always just loved that uh orientation toward like being solid and being there and being faithful, in every part of your life. I just always love that song.
God, yes, thank you. And my last question is called Ask the Next Guest. Here's how it goes. Every guest gets to throw a question at the next guest. I believe it adds unique touch, allowing the previous guest to pose a question to the next one. Sabrina Dashner was my wonderful guest, and she passed on her question to you. Are you ready to answer?
Okay, yes, I think so.
Yeah, and
If you could travel back in time to any time, when would it be and why?
Um, I think that I would travel back to, okay, this is going to be really, I don't know. I have a thing with very large hats. Like, you know how like the British have these like amazing hats. I always feel like I was born in the wrong time
me
period
too.
because like I want to wear these amazing hats and have these amazing dresses. And so
Absolutely.
like I wanna go back and I wanna meet Coco Chanel and I wanna be like, tell me all your strategies about looking amazing because I
Right.
like that kind of amazing, like the hat and the dress and like the classic way of presenting yourself. I always have found that very incredible. I know it's very superficial, but it was like the first thing
Right.
that came to mind.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's your time to ask my next guest,
Okay.
Sandra.
So when I used to teach back in the day, at the end of a lesson to help people help the kids like wrap up their thinking, I would ask them to think in an analogy. So I would say like, today we talked about this, whatever it was, topic. Pick like a blender or a spatula or a wick or a toaster oven, and tell me how what you just learned is related to that kitchen item. So I think the question that I would ask is like, for you to pick a kitchen item, whatever it is, like, again, refrigerator, toaster, whatever it is, and then ask your next guest, how does the topic that they were discussing, like, how is it similar to a blender, or how is it similar to a spatula? Like something like that forces them to really think like in an analogy
Yeah.
about what they were doing.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandra. And you know what? Guess what? We've done. We made it. I think we create together great conversation because I feel so good with you, and like it was so simple to talk to you. Like, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to my podcast. And yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Yes, and like to our listeners, your support means the world to us. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, where we release new episodes every Tuesday featuring exciting guests who are shaping the future of the fields. And thank you once again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another enlightening episode. Until then, keep learning and growing. Bye.